All right, let's dive into one of the most common and honestly, one of the most complicated things you'll find in any workplace: progressive discipline. It's a system that's designed to be fair, but as we're about to see, it creates this huge hidden paradox for anyone in a leadership role.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You've had a job, you know that mistakes just happen. Maybe you missed a deadline, maybe you were late a couple of times. It's just part of being human and part of work. The real question is, what's supposed to happen next? Is it about following a strict set of rules, or is it about having a real conversation?
So, the textbook answer to this is something called progressive discipline. And on paper, the definition sounds perfect. It's a formal process, step by step, all designed to help people get back on track. And the main idea here, the goal, is supposed to be about growth first and consequences second.
And it follows this really clear path. You can kind of think of it like a ladder of consequences. It starts small, just a simple chat, a verbal reminder. But if the problem keeps happening, it escalates. You get a formal written warning, then maybe a suspension, and only as a very last resort, termination. It's structured, it's predictable, and in theory, it's fair.
Let's paint a picture. Say you're working at a grocery store and you've been showing up late. Your manager gave you a verbal heads up, but it didn't stick. So now you get a written warning. But it's not just a slap on the wrist. It comes with a super clear, achievable goal. You meet that goal, the issue is solved. No drama, no losing your job. Just simple, structured improvement. That's the system working exactly like it's supposed to.
So yeah, it seems really straightforward, doesn't it? A clear process that protects the employee and the company. But the reality, for the managers and teams actually living this day to day, well, it's a lot messier than that.
And that brings us right to the heart of the paradox. When you follow the rules to the letter, do you actually risk breaking the very trust and culture that makes a team work in the first place?
This is where a manager has a really tough choice to make. Imagine your best employee misses a huge deadline. Do you follow the procedure? Issue the formal warning, create that all-important paper trail to protect the company? Or do you have the conversation? Do you maybe skip the formal stuff for a minute and dig into why it happened to try and solve the real problem? One path is about compliance. The other is about connection.
And this boils down to the single most important question we're asking in this explainer. Is it possible that this whole system, a system designed to protect the organization legally, is actually costing it something way more valuable? Things like trust, speed, and maybe even the very people who make the company great. Now, this choice a manager makes, it's not just random. It's actually driven by two completely different philosophies about what makes people tick at work. So let's look at the theories that kind of shape whether a manager is going to lean towards control or towards culture.
Okay, so first up, you've got agency theory. This is the control lens. It basically assumes that, hey, if you leave people to their own devices, they're probably going to act in their own self-interest, not the company's. So from this perspective, progressive discipline isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential to keep an eye on things, enforce the rules, and minimize risk for the company.
And then, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you have theory Y. This is the developmental lens. This theory assumes the exact opposite, that people are naturally motivated, they want to do a good job, they want to take ownership. So if there's a problem, it's not the person, it's the system. It's a failure in management or training. And here, discipline isn't about punishment at all, it's a chance to coach someone.
Okay, so enough with the theory, right? How does this stuff actually play out in the real world with real companies? Well, let's look at two giants that have placed huge bets on opposite ends of the spectrum.
So we're putting Canadian Tire Corporation, the massive Canadian retailer, head-to-head with HubSpot, the global software giant. One of them lives and breathes procedural control, which is pure agency theory. The other is all in on a culture of development, straight out of the Theory Y playbook.
So at a place like Canadian Tire, you've got this enormous workforce spread all over the place. For them, consistency is everything. Their whole strategy is about reducing risk. That formal step-by-step process makes sure everybody is treated the same, which is so important if you have to defend yourself in court. Now, for an employee, yeah, you're protected by clear rules, but it can also feel kind of rigid and impersonal. So here's the deal. They accept the risk of a slower, more bureaucratic culture in order to protect themselves legally.
Now let's totally flip the script and look at HubSpot.
They build a completely different world. Their strategy is all about empowerment and what they call radical transparency. They almost never use a formal discipline process. Instead, it's all about constant conversations about performance. And if you're not a fit, the exit can be really, really swift. So as an employee, you feel incredibly valued. You have a ton of autonomy, but it is a high-stakes game. They accept the exact opposite risk of Canadian Tire, a higher chance of legal trouble in exchange for a super dynamic, innovative culture.
And this chart just lays it out, crystal clear. It's all a strategic trade-off. Canadian Tire chooses low legal risk, but by doing that, they accept a higher risk of their culture getting slow and stale. HubSpot goes the other way. They're willing to risk legal challenges to keep their culture fast and innovative. Neither one is right or wrong. They're just different, deliberate choices about what kind of risk you're okay living with.
So if you've got these two extremes, where does that leave the average leader today? Well, the answer isn't about picking a side. It's about finding a smart, strategic balance between the two.
So here's a little 3-part playbook to help find that balance. First, think of it as a discipline continuum. Use the formal, by-the-book process for the really serious stuff, ethics, safety, legal issues. But for everything else, skill gaps, performance issues, use a coaching approach. Second, remember that culture trumps compliance. A really strong culture of feedback can solve most problems before they ever need a formal process. And finally, you got to reframe how you think about documentation.
That documentation, that paper trail, it shouldn't just be a record of failure to protect the company legally. No way. It should be a tool for development. The conversation and the paperwork that follows should be about 80% focused on solutions for the future and only 20% on what went wrong in the past. It becomes a roadmap for getting better, not just a list of screw-ups.
Now, this playbook can help managers make much better choices today. But if we look just a little bit down the road, that choice might get taken out of their hands completely, all because of technology. Here's a pretty wild hypothesis for you. What if generative AI could make this entire process proactive instead of reactive? Just imagine an AI coach that notices an employee is starting to miss deadlines, and it instantly gives them a personalized time management training module weeks before a human manager would even spot the pattern. The entire focus shifts from punishment to prevention. It's a game changer.
So after all that, the paradox really comes back to you. Now that you've seen the trade-offs, the theories, even a little glimpse of the future, what's your take? Would you rather have the protection that comes with a rigid, high-procedure system? Or is the freedom of a high-trust culture where you think you do your best work?